Most of the important things in the world have been accomplished by the people who have kept on trying when there seems to be no hope at all. By Dale Carnegie. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Expert-Dale podcast to fulfill your mind with the virtues of life. I'm your host, Umang Panchal, inviting you to join us at Expert-Dale podcast, where we meet some enormous personalities from the world and listen them to learn from their stories. Thank you all for joining us today and welcome to episode number 7 of the Expert-Dale podcast. The topic and the guest of our today's talk is a bit different than others. So let me first introduce you to the guest, who is the outstanding example of human spirit, courage and inspiration. He is the brand ambassador of NHSBT, an organization works for organ transplant and blood donation services across the United Kingdom. But please be conscious and strong-minded to listen his life story, who had 2 transplant surgeries of his kidneys and pancreas. He suffered with type 1 diabetes from his childhood of age about 14. The man who had gone through that tough time when he needed to take more than 4 insulin injections a day in order to be alive. Life was not as easy as he feels right now, but I gave you just a half of his introduction. So let me finish his journey from a sufferer to the man of inspiration. His article in the York Place enlightened many lives. The massive changes comes when he became the name and the face of the happiness behind the organ donation campaigns. He is now working to help as many people as possible to give them a new life by organ donation, and his efforts impacted on thousands. I know this is a huge, but the talk about his hardship, his mindset during the battle with his life, and the energy that he emitting to make world happier will blow your mind. So please help me to invite our today's guest, Mr. Mark Smith. Welcome, Mark, to my show at Expert-Dale podcast.
Thank you for having me, Umang. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you so much, Mark. And let's begin this talk. And Mark, I have one crazy hobby. It's about to find good quotes. And I found one that strength does not come from winning. Your struggles developing your strengths. When you go through hardships and decide not to surrender, that is called strength. By Arnold. And hence, let's go back into your adolescence age and tell me about the day when you diagnosed by the type 1 diabetes, and as an innocent, or I can say the amateur kid, what was the situation you faced over that?
Well, I was 14 years old, and like most 14-year-olds, I was dreaming of the life I had ahead of me. Here we have air cadets because I wanted to be in the Air Force as a pilot, so I was looking to do that, and I was very excited about doing that. But over the space of a very short period of time, just 2 weeks, I became quite poorly. I lost a lot of weight. I started going to the bathroom more. I was drinking loads, and I just felt really, really rough. I lost probably about 2 stone, literally in 2 weeks, which was very dramatic. Until one day, I actually fell asleep in school just during the first lesson of the day, went home, slept all day, went to the doctors that evening, had some tests, and they told me at that point that I was type 1 diabetic.
So you just felt that kind of sleepiness, and then you went there and it was diabetes.
Yes, I was doing a paper round as well, and there were times when I was actually sleeping through my alarm clock. Type 1 diabetes, it's a nefarious illness, and it takes a lot of energy out of you, and it really, really saps you. And when it's not treated, it can be very damaging and very harmful. They actually thought I was probably only about 24 hours away from going to a diabetic coma, and probably only another 24 to 48 hours, if untreated, from possibly passing away from it, because that's how nasty diabetes can be. It's an awful, awful illness to get.
Oh, I understand. And one more important thing is, I have seen the diabetic patient of like a 60-year-old or 40-year-old, but you have the diabetes and it's like a 14. And I also have a question that about the diabetes, that it's like diabetes 1. So how
Yeah.
many types are there, and have you differentiate them?
Well, generally there's two types, handily called type 1 and type 2. So type 1 is kind of known as a juvenile type of diabetes, where it's tend to be more genetic, involving a loss of function of insulin production from the pancreas, from the organ itself. And it only happens generally in younger people. It can happen in older ages, but generally it's much younger people that get this type of diabetes. And that is dealt with by having to take on injections of insulin every day, managing a specific diet of carbohydrates to balance it all up with the insulin that you take. And it's all a big juggling act, in essence. There's nothing that you can do with it. It's just you have to live a kind of very regimented life.
Mm.
Type 2 diabetes tends to be more lifestyle, more than anything else. So, although again, it's not categoric. Again, generally, the highest number of the highest proportion of people who have type 2 is because of their lifestyle choices, and it tends to do with sort of physical fitness, how well they've eaten, how well they've looked after themselves. It's still to do with insulin production, but not on a big scale like type 1 has. And type 2 generally don't need insulin injections. It's all managed through tablets and significantly diet.
Okay, I understand that there are two types. Okay,
Yeah.
fine. So it's really bizarre for me because I even don't know about that thing. But after getting all this information at the age of 14 or 15, I believe that after getting awareness that what kind of disease you have and what can be the consequences you could face, what was your response to yourself, and how you got the proper knowledge and information about these difficulties? Also,
Yeah.
please lead me to that critical conditions when the situation become dangerous.
Yeah, as you've hit on there, being 14 and being told that you're going to be diabetic is a really, really hard thing to hear. And I was told that would have an impact for the rest of my life. Even to this day, diabetes can't be cured. It's not something that is cured. There's plenty of research out there, but it's always going to be something that's just managed. And I was told that at the time. So not only did I have the information that I was contracted this diabetes, but I would be diabetic for the rest of my life. I would be on injections for the rest of my life. And it would stop me doing many things that I wanted to do. For example, it would stop me being a pilot in the Air Force because they don't go hand in hand. I was also in the middle of, we have in this country what we call GCSEs, which is the sort of main exams you have at secondary school. And I was right in the middle of studying for those, so that it also had an impact on that aspect of my life too. And it was devastating to hear that information and be told that you would have this thing forever, and it was life changing. And I really struggled for it for a long time. I didn't do particularly well in my first draft of exams for those GCSEs. I had to retake some of them just to get sort of respectful grades. But even for the few years after leaving school, I wasn't sure what I really wanted to do with my life because I had my dreams and my heart set on being a pilot. I ended up working, I think my first job when I left school was working as a lifeguard because I was a very, very good swimmer at school. And then just working for some local shops and bits and pieces like that, but kind of directionless, I guess.
I understand that, and it's really bizarre for getting aware about the situation at the age of only 40, and then you cannot do what the other boys and the people of your age are doing, and you just set beside of the age of what they are doing right now. I understand that, and it's a really, really difficult time, I believe.
Yeah, it was. When I became diabetic, it was 1985, and back then the way that treated type 1 diabetes was you had a certain amount of food for your breakfast, and you had your breakfast at a certain time. You had a snack in the middle of the day, in the middle of the morning. You had your lunch. Everything was all done at set times and set amounts of food. And I remember particularly being in class. I remember one instance where we were watching something on a slideshow, and I was there eating stuff in the class, trying to be really discreetly quiet and failing because it was impossible to do so, and being really self-conscious about that. And you become a focus point. And sometimes that focus point isn't always a positive focus point. Sometimes, kids will be kids, won't they? And anything different they find threatening, and they can victimize people. I wasn't particularly bullied. I'm not going to say that, but or picked on. But you could tell people felt I was different and something not to kind of be involved with. So I was very much left to myself at school.
I understand. And sometimes it feels, I can say sometimes, all time it feels embarrassing when you are there.
Yeah, it was, but I did find a really good way of coping with it, and it's something I still love to do now. And it's when I went back to school after having the diabetes, after being in hospital, it was about 2 or 3 weeks later. I was looking through our school library, and I don't know how many of your listeners will know of him, but I found the comics of Tintin. And I became a huge fan of Tintin because it was all became a sort of escapism into something that I could just enjoy, just be part of. And now I have a huge collection, not just of Tintin comics, but posters and figures and all sorts of bits and pieces, because it was a comfort zone for me at a very, very difficult and painful time of my life.
Wow. So you found your book, Tintin, that helped you to move ahead from your situation, what you're facing right now.
Yeah, absolutely. It was something very, very positive. It was quite a surprise that we'd have that in the school library, but I took it with both hands, and I couldn't get enough of it, because it was a way that I could stop thinking about the diabetes and start thinking about something a bit more positive and a bit more refreshing than just thinking about this illness that I had to deal with every day.
Got you. And it's awesome that you have a distraction from your illness, that what you have and what you actually want to do, and that distraction helps you to move or to come out from this situation. Wow. Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. And what was the reaction of your family when you diagnosed, or how they helped you to come out of this situation?
Yeah, my mum was absolutely devastated that I'd have this, and I think she felt, and probably, and I know she still does to some degree, that for some reason that it was her fault, that she had some blame in this. But of course, diabetes just does what it does, and it just gets people. Whoever they are, and no matter how many times I say to my mum, this is not your fault at all. It is what it is. So my mum found that really, really hard. My dad was a great support. He came to hospital with me, sort of held my hand the first time the nurse came in to give me an injection. Obviously, it was a big moment for me, was that. And there needed to be, at 14, I was too old to be on the children's ward. I was too young to be with the adults. But the staff at the hospital were great as well, and they were very supportive, and they got me a room on my own. It was just over Christmas. So I had the TV in with Christmas films on and stuff. And when I left the hospital, I actually left hospital on my 15th birthday, which was just 2 days before Christmas. And the nurses made me a diabetic birthday cake, which I will always remember that to this day.
Wow.
I'll always remember that cake, because that just felt so thoughtful and significant. And it just took a lot of edge off what I was going through. So my parents have been very, very supportive with dealing with that through the years.
That's awesome.
yeah,
You have a good family over there, and that's why you just go through it, and it was so awesome. When you have a good family, they support you, you will have a double energy to cope up with what you are feeling now.
Yes, absolutely. If you people who support us in life are very, very precious.
Yep, I believe so. Okay, so after this information, I want to know about that. The situation, the critical condition, when the situation became dangerous and you went through the different surgeries. So when it happened and how you faced that kind of critical situation?
Yeah, well, as I mentioned, the diabetes is a nasty and nefarious illness, and it even when it's looked after, and I'll hold my hands up. I looked after it as best I could, but I'm only human, and we all have lapses. But I did the best I could with it, and the trouble with diabetes, over a long period of time, it works in the background and just slowly damages your body because you can't control the sugar levels in your body as well as your own body can, and it's the difference in sugar levels in your blood that causes the damage. And because it's your blood, it causes lots of damage across the body potentially, particularly with nerves and things like that. So it was quite a few years later when I started having issues appear because of the diabetes. And it started off, strangely enough, with a problem with my bladder, that I stopped being able to go to the bathroom quite so easily. And I was still in kind of late 20s, early 30s when that happened. I started having problems with my eyes and getting bleeds in my eyes because of the diabetes. So what happens there is, if the blood sugars aren't working so well, the eyes grow extra capillaries to deal with extra blood supply, bring extra blood supply to your eyes, but those capillaries are very fragile. And they can burst, and I've actually had that happen a couple of times, which is very, very difficult to deal with. So I've ended up having surgery on my eyes before. I've had injections in my eyes, which is not fun. I've had surgery on my bladder, all sorts of bits and pieces, really. And I also ended up with stomach issues. So I've got something which causes a lot of stomach issues as well. But it was the kidney failure that I've then found out, and I was discovered to have kidney failure through a routine checkup for a university study. And that was back in sort of late 2007, early 2008. And this was directly caused by the diabetes as well. And that's where things took a dramatic turn for the worse.
So you said you were in the university at that time?
Yes. Well, no, I wasn't at that point, but I went to take part in a study through my diabetic clinic. And then it's through that they discovered my kidneys had failed. Now, I have been to university, but quite some time ago.
Oh, I understand. And you said the blood flowing through your eyes, it was really dangerous. I feel so.
Yeah, I just to kind of re-explain that. So with diabetes, the amount of sugar that you have in your body is all controlled through your blood veins, through your blood vessels and capillaries. Now, if your blood vessels, all your arteries and all your organs and all your cells are either getting too much sugar or too little sugar, your body tries to compensate for that by increasing blood supply to those places. And the first place that starts to happen, where the smallest capillaries are in your eyes. So your eyes don't get enough blood because the body hasn't dealt with it very well, and it's being damaged by the diabetes. So your body itself tries to repair itself, and it tries to repair itself by growing these extra capillaries, so therefore increasing the blood supply into your eyes. So with blood supply, that's how your vision works. You need the blood supply for your eyes to work. And if the blood supply is not there, then your eyes would start failing. So it grows these extra capillaries to get extra blood there. But those capillaries are very thin, very fragile, and they can burst really, really easily. And in fact, a lot of diabetics would tell you that if during routine eye tests, they will get photographs taken of the backs of their eyes, and those photographs will be looking actively for these capillaries. And if they see them, they'll use laser treatment to destroy them before they burst, and therefore, so it kind of stops the problem happening before it gets worse. So it's quite dangerous. You don't lose your vision per se, but your eyes do fill up with blood, so you kind of lose the vision temporarily because you have blood in your eye and your blood blocks your vision. But it is fixable, but it's very dramatic.
I got you. And so what about the transplant surgery? And can you please explain me that how the process went through, or when you apply for that, how you get the organs, or it was very critical situation at that time?
And it's a great question as well, Umang, because I know here in the UK it's very, very different to how it's in America. I've known people in America who have transplants. Obviously, in my position, I'm in touch with quite a lot of people. And I actually had a really good friend who lived up in Oregon, in Astoria, who had a transplant about a week before I did. And we just met through social media several months beforehand. So I have first-hand experience, or second-hand experience, let's say, of how transplantation works in the States compared to it is here. So this will be quite interesting for your listeners. But basically, here in the UK, what happens is, obviously my kidneys failed. I was then informed after a period of time where they tried to manage the kidney function level through medication, that ultimately I would need a transplant. I was given an option of having a pancreas transplant at the same time. And I felt that I would go for that because it was the pancreas that caused the diabetes in the first place, or the pancreas not working so well. And if they put in a new pancreas, the pancreas would provide the insulin. So to cut that part off, it wouldn't stop me being diabetic, but it would stop me having to do injections because I would have a working pancreas that was a transplant. And that would be the treatment for the diabetes instead of injections. So I opted to have the kidney and pancreas simultaneously. After various tests, which took quite a few months to go through, I was put onto a waiting list. And here in the UK, how it works, it's a national waiting list. It's not first come, first served or anything like that. It's all done on best match. And we don't have to pay for it as well, which is nice. And so we just wait until the appropriate organs come up. Now, for kidney and pancreas, I was told the waiting list would probably be about 18 months or so. Actually, ended up waiting for about 7 months when I got a phone call from the hospital over in Manchester in the north of England, saying that they had some organs for me, and could I come in? How quickly could I get to the hospital? And I went that morning. It was about 4:00 in the morning. We actually had the police knocking on the door because I never heard the phone call from the hospital trying to ring me. So they sent the police to come and knock on my door to say, "You're getting a phone call. Manchester needed you to go in because you could be having a transplant." We went over at 4:00 in the morning. And here, what else they do is they call up 2 or 3 different people who are closely matched to those organs. So they have some backups just in case. I was the main person for those organs, and I was fit and well enough to take them. And they chose me to have those organs at that time. So it was on the 6th of July, 2009. At lunchtime, I was wheeled into the operating theatre for an 8-hour operation.
8 hour?
8 hours, yes.
I'm speechless now.
It's all right. It's all right.
To find this journey.
Yeah, it was. It was an emotional time. And bizarrely, what we were told was we'd probably get called over 2 or 3 times before it would be time for me to have my transplant. And that was just an average. It wasn't because of any rules or regulations about you had to go over a certain number of times. Just said usually people get called 2 or 3 times on average before they have the transplant. But bear in mind, it's just done on who's or how closely matched those organs are to the individual. On the tissue, not just on blood group. It's all done on matching the tissues up as well. And it just so happened on this occasion, I was most closely matched in blood and tissue and in everything. And I was fit enough to take it, and the organs were in really good condition. And that was it. So when we were driving over, we thought, well, we know what to expect next time it happens. And then it happened, and there's been no more next time, because 11 years later, everything's still going swimmingly.
Yeah, I believe so. And in this point, I can say you are a lucky person to get these organs at the waiting month of 7 months only.
Yeah, I've known people who have been waiting on the transplant list for quite a long time. And of course, with kidney failure, all you do is deteriorate over a period of time. And of course, people end up on dialysis.
Exactly.
Which is not fun for anybody. I miss dialysis by the skin of my teeth, literally. My function went down far enough to start talking about dialysis. But the medication I was on just kept me off it. And then with it only being 7 months waiting for the transplant, I just managed to avoid it. And just a side note, there is I've known people who have dialysis and have had chemotherapy, and so can compare it. And they do. I know a few of them do actually say they would prefer to have chemotherapy than dialysis. And the reason for that is dialysis can last a long, long time, and it's a kind of a never-ending treatment until you get a transplant. Exactly. Whereas chemotherapy is a very much defined set of treatments. It's a defined course of treatment. So people do actually say they prefer to have chemo over dialysis, which is a very stark picture, I feel.
I understand. Yeah, it is. And the thing that you have faced is really amazing, because nobody can feel it, the pain the same that you have, and it's really, really bizarre that how you manage all this situation. But now I want to go for something that is really awesome for the people. I personally reviewed many scientific research and listened many of the doctors during this COVID pandemic that strong-minded and the positive thinkers have higher rate of survival in this difficult situation, or I can say in any situation, like even if in your situation or any other diseases. And after spending this much of time in your struggle, the self-doubt, fighting with your diabetes and hunger for survival, what are the mindset during that situation you develop that help you to come out of your toxic time? Like you are saying right now, you have a toxic time during the diabetes, during the early career, even in the mid 30s, or I can say the late 20s. You have a different situation that you have to be a strong-minded person. So what are the mindsets and the skills you develop that help you?
Yeah, that's fine. Just to sort of paint a wider picture then on that journey, leading up to the transplant in 2009, it was also the time of one of the big financial crashes across the world. And I was working for a bank at the time, a bank here in the UK, and a reasonably successful corporate career. And I was made redundant because of the financial crash. And I was actually made redundant about a month before my transplant, not because of the transplant, but just coincidentally. And my wife and I, again, damage caused by the diabetes meant that if we wanted to have children, we had to explore IVF. And we'd had 3 lots of IVF before the transplant also that had failed. So you can see a picture now of having the diabetes, the kidney failure, the IVF, the redundancy. Everything seemed pretty stark. And and I was actually on antidepressants before my transplant. I wouldn't say I was actively noticeably depressed, but it was just a lot going on at that time. And then going through that big operation and being in hospital for 17 days, I had a major bleed while I was in hospital as well, which was quite threatening to the transplant itself. What happened after that was quite interesting. And I heard while I was in hospital about various things that people could do. And one of them was the Transplant Games, which is, I won't talk too much about the Transplant Games because I don't want to deviate too much from the message. But I use that as a way of saying, well, people who have transplants can go and do all these sports. And just to put that in a little sort of side note about the games, it's like an Olympics for transplant and dialysis patients. So people all across the UK, you guys have it in the States, have it in Africa, America, South America, Australia, everywhere. And they have World Transplanted Games as well. And we all come together and we take part in a huge round of sports, everything from your traditional stadiums, things like 100 metres, 1,500 metres, long run, long jump, high jump, etc. Cycling, swimming, basketball, volleyball, all sorts of things. You win medals for it and for different events and so on and so forth. So that gave me an eye-opener into, transplant doesn't necessarily mean that things have to end. It means that things can begin. And instead of looking backwards on the negative things that I'd had in my life, it was an opportunity to open up a new door of my life and a new chapter of my life and use it to make more of my life that I'd ever done before, and an opportunity that I could use to help other people in a way I'd never done before. So rather than being a bad thing, I saw it, I think opportunity is the right word, as an opportunity to improve myself and help other people because of what I'd been through.
I understand that, and it's awesome, Mark. I love it. I love it when people share what they felt, the pain that can lead to the death, but they defeat and become inspirations for others. And I am writing your each word, what you are saying right now, that can help in difficult situation when we may lose our willpower to survive. And I'm getting a good information from you that don't think about the negative that happened with your life, and think about the opportunities that can give an amazing chance to you to grow beyond your limits. And let's move further in this topic. And I know that during diabetes, your food and physical exercises impact a lot on your health. So can you please share me what was your diet and the exercise routines over that time?
Yeah, well, during the time of being diabetic, I wasn't allowed anything particularly sweet or sugary, for instance. So things like ice cream, cakes. I've got very much of a big sweet tooth here, and I found that really, really hard not to be able to just kind of munch away on sweets and chocolate to my heart's content. Not that anyone should anyway, but I found it really tough to deal with that. So it was all about carbohydrates with diabetes and counting them. So it's meals would have to be potatoes and breads and things like that. But there are lots of things you can eat which don't make a difference. Fruit and vegetables and bits of dairy and that cheese and milk and stuff like that. And exercise. To be honest, while I was diabetic, I wasn't a huge one for exercise. And something I'm sure we'll come on to is with walking. And I would always say going for a walk would be because you have to go somewhere for a particular reason. You're going to the shop, or you're going into town, or you're going to see a friend. So I didn't do any particular exercise. I did do a lot of swimming, if anything. More than anything else, but again, I was and still am. I'm not a particularly fast swimmer, but I can swim a long way. I did a 2-mile badge when I was at school, so I can swim a long way, just not very quickly. And that's kind of the exercise that I took on. But I was not given a specific routine, but I just had to be aware of everything that I ate. And kind of in the early days, we had to count what we used to have to count almost literally the carbohydrates you had on the plate, and everything was given a number. So like a slice of bread would be 2 carbohydrates. And you're only allowed a certain number of carbohydrates on your plate at any given time. So you could make up that number however you wanted to. Exactly. But if you had 2 slices of bread, if you wanted potatoes, then you could only have a very small portion of potatoes. It was all about the balancing of the carbohydrates within your meals. And then you had to balance that up with how much insulin you were taking as well. And later on, as diabetes changed and the rule and how the understanding of diabetes changed, those things became a little bit more fluid, and it became more down to us control. So we could increase or decrease that insulin, and increase or decrease the amount of food we're eating accordingly. So if we're feeling a bit hungry and wanted a bit more carbohydrate, or indeed we wanted a little treat or something, it wasn't a no. It was just be mindful of it, but be mindful of how much insulin you take to go along with it. So it became much more flexible.
Okay, I understand. And you said one important thing: you have to manage your desire on your needs.
Yes, you do.
I understand that it's a really important thing, but the habit that you have developed from your childhood is like to swim, and I think swimming is the exercise that can help you for all your body movements, and it's from your head to your toe. It can help you, and you just pursued it even in your difficult situation. And the walking, not for any intentional walking, but you just go for the walk, and it's really important. And the number that you have said, numbers is the important, and it's all the game of the numbers, whether it's a finance, whether it's life, or whether you are exercising for making muscles, or you are making any proper diet. It's all about the number, and you mark the numbers on your food, and then you eat only what it need for you, not the desires. That's awesome.
But now it's different, because I have the transplants, which now stops me from actively being a diabetic. I don't have to follow a diabetic diet anymore. So now with transplant, ironically, I can eat what I want when I want, and I don't have to worry about taking any insulin, because I have the pancreas doing that job for me as the transplant. So everything's changed now.
I understand.
And I no longer go swimming for my exercise. I now go for long distance walks for my exercise.
That's awesome. I'm really happy for you that you are doing what you actually want to do in your life. You do not have to worry while you are eating the sweet. Yeah, you concern about it, but it's not like that you have to get an insulin injection for that.
It is, yeah, absolutely.
That's awesome. And Mark, unconsciously, me and one of my friends were talking about the death and importance of life. It was really so authentic that we both eventually started to talk about this organ donation, and it's important. And for that instance, I haven't seen your speeches and all the stuff that you are doing right now, but I am here now with you to talk about this very important topic today. And the way you are working for this is really phenomenal, and the contribution to the society is uncountable. So let's do one thing. Now I am ready with my notes, and I want to know that after these dark clouds, when the sun started to shine in your life, after the organ transplant, what happened to you, and what led you to serve for the society, and how did you start that?
Yeah. Okay. Well, what happened was several months after my transplant, I had an opportunity to go on a family holiday to Wales, and Wales has some spectacular mountains, and the highest mountain in Wales is called Snowdon, and it's very, very high. It's not as high as a lot of mountains, but it's for this country, it was very high. I forget how high it is off the top of my head. I think it's about 1,100 feet, 1,000 feet. It's 1,085 meters. It is. So it's a tall mountain, tall enough.
Mm-hmm.
And this was only a few months after my transplant. When I got home from my transplant, I struggled to walk around the block because it was quite uncomfortable and painful.
Mm-hmm.
But I wanted to take on this mountain, and it's a popular mountain to walk up. There is actually a train that takes you to the top if you so wish. But I decided at that point that I was going to take on this mountain. And I think that wasn't just so much a physical challenge as a mental challenge for myself. And I strived to get up that mountain, and I did it, and I achieved it. I think it was about 7 months after my transplant, so certainly within a year. I got to the top of this mountain. It's 7 miles to the top, 7 miles back. So it was an arduous walk, some very, very steep sections, but I achieved it. And that gave me a really good sign of things to come. And it really gave me, it impelled me forward in what I was going to do. By this point, we'd had a daughter through IVF, so we'd gone back to the IVF treatment, and this time it was successful. So after the transplant, and I had also written to and been very fortunate to meet the family of my donor.
It's awesome.
And these things all serve to push you on for striving for success and being able to become somebody that can say to others, I've managed to do this. This is what a transplant has meant for me, that I've been able to climb to the top of this mountain, which before transplant was something I wouldn't have even considered.
Exactly.
It was nowhere near on my to-do list or bucket list or anything like that. It was just the opportunity came up, and what an opportunity it was, and I grasped it with both hands. And I think that's something else that is important in life. And that journey it really only just started there. And it was a very small start compared to where life has taken me since.
Wow. I believe that. And you just did one important thing. You go beyond your limits at that time, and you feel that you can get the success. And after then that, you feel the power of the transplant of the organ, and then it's made a huge difference in your life. It was the successful IVF, and you get your children. It's the success of the success, and you get your family. That's the very important thing for a human, for a man, to have a family over there.
It is. And we actually added to it a few years later by adopting as well. So we've got one daughter through IVF who will actually be 10 in a couple of weeks' time. And we have another daughter who will be 6 next month who we adopted. Another difficult process to go through, which I'm not going to talk about in any great detail.
I understand.
Just to say that we felt we had enough life experience to adopt a child and give another child a home that they deserve to have. And I've ended up, since the transplant, being a stay-at-home father to them both, which has been a great privilege and joy.
Yeah. And it's an emotional moment for both of you and your wife that have a children in your home. It feels the liveliness at home.
Yes.
And I can feel it.
And they are both wonderful kids. They are so polite and kind and thoughtful and generous that I'm very, very proud of them both.
Yeah, congratulations for getting these amazing children to your life. And it was the noble thing that you have done. You just adopt. Though you have a successful IVF, you adopt, and it's inspirable for many of us. So Mark, you are really amazing, and I'm getting such a powerful stuff from you right now, because I'm getting the lessons to be the perfect human, to be the true human in this world. And you are the example of the lucky human who got the organ when you required right now. And after that, consciously or unconsciously, you have started to work on the path which is the most noble and milestone for the humanity that you have said. Your services to the mankind shows that you are the rare kind over here, and you did not just convert your pain in the opportunity, but you inspired the other people by giving your own example. Okay, and it's impacting on the world. I admire your phenomenal services for the humanity. But Mark, the numbers and the fact for the organ transplant shows the bitter reality that the waiting time is so long and so high for that. And what about this waiting time or the numbers that the organ require for the people? What is the current situation right now?
Again, it's very different here in the UK to how it is in America, where it's more, dare I say, financially driven in the States on people's ability to pay for their transplants. So what I can do is just give the experience we have here, because it kind of runs similar anyway. There's not a significant difference between the two.
Okay.
Here we actually have at the moment around about 6,500 people currently in the UK waiting for a transplant. At the moment, we're having sort of three. I think it's around 3 people who are dying every day while they're waiting for a transplant. 3 is a very small number, but that's 21 a week. That's 90 a month. That's 1,000 a year. Sort of dodgy maths there, but sort of broad round figures really. And that's 1,000 people that don't have to die. And transplantation is a very strange subject because it's not, the waiting list isn't a first come, first served. As I said before, it's on best matches. You can only get a transplant if you get organs come in that match you.
Yeah.
And if those organs never come in, and of course we don't want people to just pass away willy-nilly so that someone can get a transplant, of course not. So we're very reliant on those organs being the right organs for the right person. And like life, unfortunately, people don't always get the things that they want. And it's the same with transplantation, unfortunately. But the more people who are organ donors, and the only way people can be organ donors is to be registered organ donors and to voluntarily be organ donors, the more people that do that, the less likely 1,000 people a year would die. And of course, numbers in the States will be significantly higher because of the higher population. And what we've changed to here, what we've changed to here just recently, actually just in May, was an opt-out system. So everybody here in the UK, so England, Wales, Scotland, etc., everybody here is considered to have given consent for organ donation, unless you actively opt out of the organ donor register, which is easily done, and it still gives people the choice to do that. But what it means is that those 1,000 people a year should go down. We're never not going to lose people waiting for transplant, but the lower that number is, the better. And that's what we've changed to here, and that's something that should be strived for the world over. Because in my view, as a recipient, as you say, I've done lots of things, which I'll kind of list off near the end of the things I've done. I wouldn't have done those things without having a transplant. And my donor, he'd had a conversation with his dad about what organ donation meant. And in this country, when people learn to drive and they apply for a driver's license, they can actually tick a box to say they're going to be organ donors. And my donor had actually ticked that box on his driver's license, so he was aware of what organ donation meant, and he made that voluntary decision to be an organ donor. And then what happened with him, he passed away, and I received his organs, and another 4 people received organs from him as well. So he saved 5 people's lives. And one who I know would have died that night waiting for a liver transplant if they hadn't received it. But just by being a an organ donor. So that's the difference between people being organ donors and people choosing not to be organ donors. I respect people who don't want to be organ donors because it's a very personal choice.
Yes.
You can never force somebody to do something they don't want to. And we all in here in the UK, we call it a gift, the gift of life.
Yes.
And that should always be. It always should be a gift because it's done through kindness. It's done through charity. It's done through thoughtfulness for humanity, through somebody else's suffering. And by being an organ donor, you can relieve somebody of that suffering.
I understand that. And one more thing I wanna know from you, that how you are doing this charity. What was the amount that you have collected from your different campaigns, and how does these campaigns work for different people?
Yeah, well, I think that's an appropriate time to kind of just go through some of the things that I've done then. So after Mount Snowdon, I got a real walking bug, and that followed by doing. We have here locally in Yorkshire a walk called the Yorkshire Three Peaks. They're not particularly high. They're quite challenging, but it's not walking the Himalayas or anything like that.
Yeah.
But you still, the challenge is to do these 3 peaks and to walk 25 miles within 12 hours. So it's still quite a challenge to do that. And that was the first walk I did in 2013. And I raised around about £1,300 doing that.
Wow.
In dollars, it's what pretty much double. So sort of $2,500, I'd say approximately, as a conversion. Following that, the following year, I did another big walk. That some of you will have heard of Hadrian's Wall. Which is an old Roman wall up here in the north of England. It crosses the whole country. There's a lot of it doesn't exist anymore, but there's a lot of it that does. And there's a walk that you can do that covers the length of it, which is 88 miles. And I walked that in 6 days. And I actually had the pleasure of walking that with my donor's mum.
Wow.
That raised another £1,700. So let's say $3,500, maybe nearly $4,000. If any of your listeners say he's getting that conversion wrong, I do apologise.
No, that's fine. That's
just
fine.
Giving a sort of rough idea.
Yeah.
Following that, I actually had a foot injury. So diabetes caused a bit of neuropathy in my foot, sort of nerve damage, and I broke all the bones in my right foot and didn't realise I did that. And I was doing some big walks still at the time. But clearly doing a big walk for charity was out of the window. So I did a big charity dinner event here in Harrogate. I'd never organised one before. The idea just popped into my head one day. And in life, sometimes you just have to run with things. And I ran with doing this charity dinner. My expectation was to raise just as much money as I'd raised doing the 2 walks the 2 years before. So to raise around about £3,000, more or less, doing those two, doing this one dinner, I actually quadrupled it, and doing that, the charity dinner alone made it £11,500 profit.
Wow.
And I've done a few other bits and pieces since, even during this pandemic, when I've actually had to shield because of my because of the transplant and my medication. But even then, I did despite never having been on an exercise bike before, I did a 100-mile exercise bike ride in one day, and raised kind of, it was only about £500 or so. And I've done a few other bits and pieces. So collectively, together, to date, I've raised around about £16,000 for charity, doing those events. But beyond that, it's not just about the money that's raised, it is about raising awareness.
Exactly.
So I've done lots of radio shows, live radio and recorded radio up and down the country. I've been on national TV a couple of times, sort of a breakfast show, and on national news. When they first announced here about changing the law to the opt-out, I was on a sort of breakfast show with the BBC on a Sunday morning.
Okay.
And I've been involved with various groups raising awareness. As you mentioned at the start, I'm an ambassador for organ donation for NHS Blood and Transplants. So NHS is the National Health Service, which I would say is a fantastic organisation, and we here in the UK absolutely cherish it. With it's a national institution that we love very, very dearly.
Exactly.
The treatment we get is second to none, and we don't have to pay for it. We pay through national insurance, but it's tiny contributions to it. It's not even noticed. But everything's at need. There's no waiting for it. If I went and broke my leg today, I'd be taken to hospital today. I'd get my leg put into a plaster cast today, and I wouldn't get charged. And it's just an amazing service. So I find it a great pleasure and great honour to support them through campaigning for organ donation as an ambassador. I'm with an organ donation committee here in the UK, just locally, and I'm part of a patient advisory group for a national charity as well.
That's really interesting.
So I've actually spoken at Westminster Houses of Parliament about organ donation with the various MPs here in the UK to encourage them about organ donation and to carry on talking about organ donation. So yes, I get very, very busy doing lots of things and fingers in lots of pies, shall we say.
Wow. And this is such an awesome event that happened, the organ donation. And yes, you said one important thing. We don't want to lose more people, and especially we don't want to lose the people like you who just get the organ and just inspiring others to do more than that. And it's awesome for me to hear from you about this kind of stuff, because when you go through the life, you have some difficulties, and Mark, you just break it, the difficulties in the opportunities. And I believe so it's awesome moment to listen you. I just have a huge amount of notes from you said. And one important thing that you are also the advising committee for the medical for the patient. And now the important question is how you feel by helping them.
I find it very rewarding personally to help people. I feel I've been given a gift, not just because of the transplant, the evidently the gift of life that gives you, but a gift of the struggle that I've had means that I can show people how they can live their lives and how things don't always have to be doom and gloom. And I respect that everybody has their own stuff to deal with, and people deal with things in very, very different ways. And it's not my job to tell people how to deal with stuff. But I think I've been given an opportunity where I can show people the way, if they choose to follow, that no matter what you go through in life, it's grasping those opportunities and making the best of them. Even the bad stuff can lead on to great opportunities. A few years ago, I won, it's just very locally, I won, we had local hero awards, and I won one of those awards for bravery.
Wow.
And I think bravery is a key word. It's bravery in the face of adversity. It's bravery facing up to the challenges that you've had to go through and saying to them, you aren't going to beat me. Even if they knock you down a little way, it's about getting back up on those stairs and climbing back to the top and succeeding and being that sort of person that says, this is my life. It's my life to live, and I'm going to live that life no matter what gets thrown at me, because I have the opportunity to do that. And if on my journey I can help other people by raising money for them, by supporting them, by counselling them, by even just listening to them, which is sometimes all people need, then that's life. That's what life is for. That's what life is about. And if you can't help other people on our journey, what's the point?
Yeah. It's awesome. I I believe that the thing that you have said about the life to help other, to listen someone who need that, and to just help by sitting beside them and to talk with them. That's the life is. That's what
It is,
about it.
Yeah. Sometimes that's all people need. It's just somebody to hear them.
Yeah, I personally believe that. Yes.
Yeah, and if you can do, if you know, I can do more because I have the power and the capacity and
Yes.
now the knowledge to do more because of my own experiences through the charity work and through the dinners and through talks and various bits and pieces. I have obviously gained a vast wealth of experience in doing that.
Exactly.
But anybody can listen, and it's a powerful tool.
Yes, it is the powerful tool to listen someone and to answer them with your knowledge, with your pain. You already face all the situation that they are facing right now, or to give them in some inspiration is a rewarding thing that you can do. And now at this point, I have a lots of information from your life, from your experiences, and the amazing story of your life. How you just converted your life from a sufferer to the man who is giving the inspiration right now. It's a delicious moment for everyone to get something, the pie of the cake, and now to celebrate the occasions that we are doing right now. Let's do one thing, and this is the questions. This is the rapid question answer session of the podcast, and we going in there. And I will ask some of the questions very quick and easy, so you just need to give me some answer about your daily routine or something. So the first question is, what's your morning routine right now?
My morning routine usually involves waking up around about 6-7 o'clock in the morning. I love having crumpets and Weetabix for my breakfast, and then it'd be getting the kids off to school. It's as simple as that.
That's crazy. Then you can do it right now. Okay, before then that it may be not possible.
No, it would have certainly been more tiring and much more difficult and complicated. But now, so easy. And the cups of tea, very important.
Wonderful. It's a celebration moment when you have that morning routine, just a simple morning routine before
just
then.
Simple.
Yep. Yeah. It's awesome.
Life doesn't need to be complicated.
Exactly. That's what I want to do. And the important thing, the next question is, how much time you spend to sleep?
Now, I'm not very good at getting a lot of sleep. I'm very much a go to bed late and wake up early sort of person, and I always have been. Even through all my health issues, you'd think it'd need lots and lots of sleep, but no, I'm a very light sleeper. I usually get about 6 hours sleep a night, maybe 7, 8 on a very, very, very rare occasion. So usually in bed by 11, so I'll wake up by about sort of 6 ish.
That's a different from the people to people, and it's fine for you.
Sometimes on an evening I just chill out and I play World of Warcraft on the computer, so just chill out.
Yeah, exactly. Yes, you're right there. The next question is, what is your favorite book and author?
My favourite author is Stephen King. So I'm a massive Stephen King fan. I've read all his books. And my favourite book of his is The Stand, which is ironically about a super flu.
Yep.
So that's my favourite book, favourite author, right there.
Great. What is your ultimate goal in your life?
My ultimate goal is to see my kids raised up to be happy, healthy, and as successful as they choose to be, whatever their definition of success is. As long as they're happy, that's my main thing. And just to keep staying well and walking for as much as possible, for as long as possible.
Yeah, awesome. The fifth question is important for me to know about. What is the definition of life as per Mark Smith?
Definition of life is living life to the best of your ability, making every moment count.
Wow, this is a simple line, but it's a very intense, and I love it.
Thank you.
I really love it. So, when difficulties will come in front of you, the only thing that can help you is your attitude towards it. And hence, Bruce Lee said that don't pray for any easy life. Pray for the strength to endure a difficult one. Mark proved this quote, that is, It could be the chance to grow more beyond your limitations while working on your difficulties. The man who have started his life with difficulties, but now he is the one who is helping others to come out from their difficulties. His contribution to the society is phenomenal and noble. I salute to the courage and magnificent attitude and activities to help others by his efforts. Thank you, Mark, for joining us today, and it was amazing experience to talk with you. It's fabulous. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me on, Umang. It's been lovely to talk to you.
Thank you so much, Mark. So don't forget to subscribe and follow us on Spotify, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Anchor, and you can also find us on Facebook, Instagram, Podchaser, Pocket Cast, Breaker, and also on YouTube. And if you like to read something about this episode, you can easily find the keynotes of the episode on our blog. You can get more information in the description, so please go and check it. So stay tuned with us to learn world's powerful techniques, strategies, skills, information to get the virtues of life.